Welcome to the Map It Forward podcast, everybody. Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Coffee Fest, happening in Pacific Northwest, Tacoma in Washington on the 15th and 16th of November, just a couple of weeks from now. If you're going to be there on the 14th which is the Thursday, I'm going to be running a full day leadership workshop. Head to coffeefest.com/leadership and check out the tickets now. Today on the podcast, I'm joined by the esteemed Sasa Sestic. Hey, Sasha.
Hey, Lee, how are you?
I'm really great. Thank you so much for doing this. It's such an honor to have you. It's going to be a fun conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's going to be a pleasure to have a chat to you and have some time to have a discussion about coffee, right?
Well, whatever we decide to talk about, right?
Sounds good.
I have to ask you to start off. Something that really, I think the first thing that I ever heard you say that impressed the shit out of me, because there are lots of things that you've said that have impressed the shit out of me, but this is the thing that impressed the shit out of me for the first time. It's when I heard you say that you're always chasing the perfect cup. You may not get there, but you're always chasing it.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's something that I've tried to. Obviously, it's inside of me always, and it has been, and I think will be. Been lucky to be tasting better and better and better coffees year by year, but in the same time, recognize that there's no perfection. It never will be perfection. It's nice to enjoy when we have this experience and to take 5 minutes or a minute to say, wow, this is it. Sometimes I get emotional as well, and you have your tears coming in and say, wow, this is the best coffee I've ever tasted.
Have you experienced that often?
Absolutely. And thankfully, to the technology and innovations on all of the fields and aspects of our coffee industry, it's been happening more and more lately, which is amazing. We don't want to be tasting the best coffees 5 or 10 years ago. I think we want to be tasting the best coffees today and tomorrow and day after tomorrow. And I think with that sort of attitude, and if we have that attitude that it's not perfect, we'll make it perfect. It's all in our heads, I guess.
Do you think that? What do you think the distance is? That's probably a better way to say it. What do you think the distance is between the way coffee tastes today compared to 10 years ago? Is it marginally better? Is it extraordinarily better?
Yeah, I think some of the memories that we have from 5 or 10 years ago, we can't really replace these memories. When we taste fruity coffee for the first time, you sort of think, hey, can coffee really taste that way? It's like a first love, right?
Yes, cheers to that.
So they can be replaced, but I'm sure if I go back to 10 years ago, I would have found a lot of faults the coffee back then we loved. But I think that's a beauty. It's a beauty of that. Finding that first love, finding the things that you like in a coffee and that impress you and inspire you, and also possibly ignoring or not really noticing what you don't like. But now that we're getting so picky in the coffee and so more educated, and we've been tasting really good coffees, in a way, most of the time what we do lately, we look for what's wrong. And then when we see that there's something wrong in there, then you kind of, okay, well, I need to make it better. But sometimes when we do taste this coffee, there's nothing wrong with it, and it's actually tasty, and it's probably, then you might think, wow, is this the best coffee I've ever had? It's good to have that moment, try to enjoy it.
How do you enjoy it? What does that mean for you?
I'm kind of I like to celebrate that with the team, with the people around me, and there's sometimes there's a lot of high fives, and then there's just like this really deep discussions about how good it is and why is it so good, and I'm sure that people looking at us from the side, and my wife always tells me that I'm obsessed, and we are obsessed with people. And I'm sure it's really funny for someone to watch us on the side and they're looking, look at these losers, like, what are they doing? They're giving
Yeah,
emotion,
no.
they're giving high fives about, how it finished on a pallet, like, what are wankers? But it's what we love, and, I don't mind hiding it from anyone. I don't care. But yeah, it's normally a lot of excitements coming from inside, and goosebumps, and really trying to capture that moment.
It's such a
My
beautiful thing, right?
Yeah, my memory is really bad. Like I remember, I forget names of the people. As soon as I meet someone, I forget their name. I forget faces a lot. I go to coffee regions that are really hard to pronounce, and I forget it right away. But when I taste delicious coffee,
Yeah.
oh, it stays forever. That stays in my head, and I remember like so many coffees from so many years ago that and these exact moments when I've tasted them, like what we felt, how we felt, what it tasted like, and more importantly, how it made us feel. So
That's the key, isn't it? Like doing something that you love and that you love enough that you want to drink in the feeling that you experience, whether it's a hard experience or whether it's a delicious experience.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I find you to be one of the most passionate people in our industry. I've never told you that before, but I'm always watching from afar. We look for people that make sense to us, and your passion really makes sense to me. Like you, I've been through a couple of careers. How do you go from being an Olympic? You won a gold medal, right?
No, we played. I played in the Olympic Games, and
Yep.
played two more World Championships for Australia.
How do you go from being an Olympiad to deciding I'm going to sling coffees?
Uh, God, I have no idea why I've decided to do that back then. Of course, now I know why, because I love coffee more than handball. But I
Do you
think it
think,
came.
sorry, I want to ask you on that statement, you love coffee more than handball. Do you think you loved handball back then as much as you love, like the passion that you had for handball? Do you think it was because you're a passionate person or because you loved handball?
I think I'm very passionate person.
Yeah.
Number one, things that I do, I always choose from the passion, desire.
Yep.
But we all need to. Some of us find what we are really passionate about earlier. Some of us find it later. Of course, I was very passionate with handball. It's a 10, 15 years, 10 years of my life.
Yep.
And but I was not passionate about everything I'm doing. I was not really passionate about waking up 6 o'clock in the morning, running 10, 15 kilometers every day of the year. And I enjoyed playing games. I enjoyed, matches. I enjoyed the team, but a lot of my training I actually did not really enjoy.
Really?
But, yeah, well, for me it was hard and physical, and I like to sleep in. I didn't like waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning. So there's a lot of these things that maybe with my DNA sort of did not quite match. But being a team player and team sport, being in that competitive spirit, that always helps to get the best out of me. So there's a lot of things I enjoyed in handball. But when I look back now, what I love in a coffee is I don't mind being and making coffees for 10 hours and experimenting. I don't mind staying late and doing coffees. I don't mind traveling to, I don't know, like so many different countries to find the best coffee. It's actually joy, everything I do there.
Yep.
So there's a lot more things that I'm passionate about coffee than what I was about handball. And that kind of keeps pushing me to, keep doing more and more exciting things in coffee.
And so your love for coffee is not just about the fact that you're a passionate person. Your love for coffee is for the love of coffee.
For the love of coffee, yeah. And that's maybe because I'm a very curious person. I always want to know more. And coffee is such a small bean, but it's so complex. It's crazy hard to understand coffee. and that's what I love the challenge. So that's what really challenges me to sort of understand the coffee in the best way I possibly can. And yeah, the fact is, none of us will ever understand the coffee,
No.
100%.
No.
And I think that's the beauty about the coffee as well.
It surprised me in the year and a half that I've had this podcast. It surprised me how much I didn't know. I didn't think I knew anywhere near even 20% of it, but I realized that what I actually knew about what we need to know about coffee is more like 3 or 4%.
Yeah.
And it shocked me when I started exploring things like the C market and the actual complexity of the matrix that is the coffee supply chain globally, and how many stakeholders are involved, and all of these intricacies. And then on top of that, you add this complex agricultural product and the idea of understanding what processing really involves, and then add to that the business end of every different element of the supply chain. There's just so much to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. There's, as you were saying, there's so much to learn, but I think for me, what's exciting is there's also so much to improve.
Yeah.
There's so many more things we can change, improve, adapt. Innovate, bring something new. To get a better result. So that's kind of what really excites me about the coffee, this past couple of years.
What do you think is the most exciting thing that you think we need to improve on and we can improve on now?
Well, you've touched the C market, right? And sometimes people ask me, hey, what's your wish? What is it that you would love to change in a coffee?
Yeah.
One day, 30, 40 years later, this is going to be completely changed. I'm not going to talk about coffee, entirely coffee, but at least for specialty coffee, I'd love us to be completely detached from a C market, and to actually be pricing these coffees fairly, that what they deserve. Even though there's a lot of specialty coffee roasters that would say, we don't really depend on the C market, but 99.9% of even specialty coffees, they do depend on the C market prices.
Yeah, and for anyone who's listening who doesn't quite understand what we mean by that, even though, because a lot of people say, but specialty isn't dependent on the C market. Look, technically, it's independent of the C market, but from a different perspective, it still takes a lead from the C market. The base price that people are focusing on when they're looking at building what the specialty price is going to be is taking its lead from the C market. And so if you're somebody who's going out there and saying, but they're independent, well, they're not. As much as we wish they were, they're not.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a million, once you really go to the farms, you understand that, you kind of understand the business, what it takes to be a farmer, as well as a coffee buyer being in so many countries. It's very, very connected. And also as a coffee roaster as well, like a lot of coffee roasters would buy very delicious coffees that are purchased throughout the C market, and because they taste good, they taste 82 points or 83 points, and they're good enough to be in a specialty coffee blends, for example. These coffees are advertised as a specialty coffee, and they taste specialty coffee.
Yep.
But how is that coffee adding a value to the farmer or communicating that message? It's actually confusing people even more, because it's not necessarily supporting the farmer in a way that, if you're paying your coffee $3, $4, $5 a pound, maybe they're paying this coffee is $1 a pound. I think today 99 cents.
99. It dropped back down below $1.
So from customers' perspective, they think they're doing the right thing because they're supporting a specialty coffee roaster. But There's there's a lot of activities that it is a specialty coffee score because it's called specialty coffee, like it's 83 points. But that's the coffee that's been sourced and purchased throughout the sea market. So is that really giving us a right picture of what the specialty coffee? Or it just keeps confusing people, or we'll be using these marketing strategies maybe in the wrong way. And if you have quite a few roasters doing it that way, then the roasters that are maybe willing to do the right thing, they, in some countries it's race to the bottom. You want to sell kilogram of coffee as cheap as you possibly can. So what are we really doing? And what message are we giving for next generations?
Mm-hmm.
So it's becoming very confusing at the moment, the way I see this entire situation.
Do you think it's becoming very confusing because people don't really understand the information at hand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's no understanding there's maybe understanding is a one answer, but I also being maybe ignorant a little bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at a possibly success as a win-win success, win for me as a coffee roaster or my customers as a cafe owners, but not necessarily another win for the entire chain.
Right.
And sometimes it is education, but sometimes it's also maybe just looking at you and your win rather than everyone to win and benefit. And if you have, I believe, more people looking at a win-win-win scenario, very quickly we would start separating what's right and what's not right.
I feel like we've got this incredible task ahead of us of trying to get standardized education across the industry for people to not just see their role and look, people are so bogged down in what their struggles are because there's a lot of them in the coffee industry. People who own businesses are looking at it and saying, fuck, everybody thinks that I'm making $1 million and I've got 3% on my margins, And then, excuse me, the shame of having to admit that they can't afford to pay more than X amount of dollars for a pound of coffee because already their margins are slim enough as they are. They don't want to admit to people that they can't afford to buy more, as well as the idea that they don't know how to fix things. They don't know how to improve things. They don't want to talk to their staff about where the culture is contributing to such slim margins, etc., etc. That's from one end of the coffee supply chain. Then you have the same exact thing happening on the back end of the supply chain at the coffee farms. And as a part of that, both of those models are looking at each other and not understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
Then you add the layer of employees of those employers having a completely different understanding of the reality of the situation because the employers don't want their employees to see how difficult they've got it.
Yeah. It's a complex thing,
It is, right?
You've sort of covered all of the things that really made me curious about a coffee.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I've started in the coffee in 2003, running a coffee shops. We still are, quite few.
I love them, by the way.
Thank you.
In Marrickville, one of my best experiences in a cafe ever.
Thank you very much. It's very nice to hear.
No problem.
And so we obviously understand the struggles, what it takes to pay the rent, wages, and all of this extra expenses that we have. But then, because in Honor Coffee, I'm very passionate about the farms. Mm-hmm. Really want to have support to give a stronger say to all of the coffee producers. I wanted to feel and understand what it takes to be a farmer, hence why I started purchasing the farms.
Yes. You've got two now, right? One in Nicaragua and one in Honduras?
One in Nicaragua, one in Honduras, one in Panama. Panama, and they all very different projects, but I want to discuss a little bit with you a Nicaragua project.
Yes, I'd love to.
The reason why we purchased that farm is for that answer. The farm is been commercial farm, been working with the sea market, 100 years old. It's not impressive farm, like just average farm, like majority of the farms in this world. That's the scenario that it is. Common varietals, Katuras, Katimos, so nothing special about it.
Big
But
farm, small farm.
About 22 hectares.
It's not
Uh,
tiny.
it's not tiny, so it's true representation of average coffee farm in the world.
Okay.
It's not above the average like maybe Honduras is, or way above the average like Panama Project is. This is just the average farm that we bought in below average condition. Problems with the leaf rust, with Troya, and all of these things. And the farm, more importantly, that was dealing with the sea market coffees.
Okay.
And it's the reality of many farms from this country that people are discouraged. The owner said, "I'm going to sell this because I'm losing money being a farmer, and this is not sustainable, and prices are really low, and I don't want to do this."
Yep.
So we've decided to buy that project not to actually see what it takes to be a farmer at that level, and also to see how we can possibly make a change to turn this average farm to be not to be dealing with the sea market coffees. And it's been a biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenges we had in the last 3 or 4 years. Just understanding when you're buying a sea market coffees, what are you supporting? And you're actually not supporting anyone. You're most likely, if you're buying a sea market coffees from Central America, you're supporting or you're extending the savanna shell life before they're gone. They're not gonna last long for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a matter of time. It's like a bomb,
Yep.
with the time, and it's just that bomb is just ready to be exploded.
You're delaying the inevitable.
Exactly, and it's and I'm not saying this from what I've heard. I'm saying that from my own experience being a farmer in that place, and it's just not sustainable. And a lot of people are saying sort of, prices are really low now. Great, we can now even charge our customers less. Yeah, you probably can, because if you continue buying coffee from ECX, and you're supporting a sea market, you probably can, but you're also going to discourage so many people on the other side of the world not to grow coffee.
Right.
And then that's when we're going to start having bigger problems. And it's taking, when we purchased the farm 4 or 5 years ago, it was taking us a lot less money to look after that farm back then than what it is now. Now you have an issue with the leaf rust, with the roya, with all of these funguses due to the climate changing and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
We actually need to start putting more money in the fields to make these coffees to give us the same results as it gave us 4 years ago. Yet prices are record low. So I'm kind of, really, to be honest, sick and tired of why do we need to keep following this, and why are we doing it? And I'm sure, the answer is probably cool. A lot of people, in my opinion, that are not even in the coffee, or they just buy the future and they sell.
Speculators.
Exactly. So they can make money, and they're the ones setting the prices for us. And it's just sort of disappointing that we're so smart, we have so much in technology, the world is moving forward, yet we're not doing anything about sea market.
I had Kali Dagana. She's a broker that works specifically in commodities. She came on the podcast and we were talking about this. And I asked her why we couldn't become independent of the sea market. And I think you and I and her should probably have a conversation together off air at some point, because she specializes in this. And the reason I say that, in her words, speculators bring liquidity to the market that otherwise would cause it to collapse.
Yeah.
And therein lies our dependence on speculators.
Yep.
As an industry.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and I agree with what she's saying. But all I'm trying to do is I'm trying to separate specialty coffee from coffee,
Right.
uh, and there's you can sell coffees at 120 a pound or dollar in Brazil, and you know that you're doing something right there.
Right. Because it's
Um,
all mechanized and the cost of production is so much lower
is,
than
um,
most other countries.
yield is like 40, 50, 60 bags per hectare.
Yeah.
But again, if you come to Honduras and or India and so many other farms that we work with, at least 100 farms that we work with, it doesn't work for them.
No.
It does not work with them to be part of this because they're making an effort to pick these coffees by hand. They looking after these coffees at a lot greater way than what they do in Brazil. And coffees are tasting. They have unique character. They're tasting great. They have a lot of personal stories behind them. And these people simply cannot survive with selling the coffee $10, $20 a pound. They can't. So I think that there needs to be separation. There needs to be addition to, let the sea market to do what sea market does. We're still drinking majority of the commercial coffees in the world, and it's a big part, and it's a very important role for all of us. For people to taste best coffees in the world and specialty coffees, they need to go through that steps, right?
Right.
None of us started drinking, $40, $50 wines or $100 wines right away. So it's
Or
a journey.
coffee. Nescafe 43 right here. That was how I started.
Absolutely. And then Starbucks, Nestle, it's very, very capsules. It's very, very important for our industry.
And the farmers.
And the farmers. But
Mostly.
we also need to separate what that does and provide a lot more clarity to what, we are trying to do in specialty coffee. What we're trying to do in Marrickville as well, for example.
I want to ask you there. Do you think, when I look at what you're doing in Marrickville, when I look at what you're doing with the way that you're fostering champions through honor, and kudos to you, you're creating a home where people who want that career trajectory to be important, you're giving them the opportunity with no apologies to say, if you want to be a world champion, come let us guide you, right? And these things are awesome. They're at the height of what specialty is about. Do you think, though, that there are enough customers as end consumers to service the other side of coffee? You don't need as many customers as a Littler cafe on smaller margins to do what they're doing. Mm-hmm. I believe that we are not in a coffee, or not only in a coffee price crisis, I believe that we're also in a coffee branding crisis.
Yeah.
I believe that what we as an industry need to be focusing on is the idea of not only how do we fix the supply chain, but how do we get end consumers to start understanding that what they're drinking is a complex commodity product that touches hundreds of hands by the time it's got to them, and that with every cup that they're drinking, they could be contributing to the demise of the coffee supply chain if the people who are the custodians of the product that have come before them haven't taken the supply chain into consideration.
Yeah. Man, you put it so nicely. I think my why in coffee and why do I do what I do is it changes. I'm sure your why changed from year to year.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. Totally.
And my why at the moment is, and it probably will change in 5 years, but is to not only to serve new experiences to customers, but more importantly, to make them comfortable that they know that they're supporting something good.
Right.
They are adding a greater value to everyone that's involved in the chain.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's my responsibility to make sure that happens. And when we give this promise to customers, that whether they're drinking a Black Betty blend, which is a house blend for milk, or they're drinking Ethiopian Jasper, that's won World Barista Championships with Aga. We want to make sure that it really everyone that's involved in that chain, that they positively benefit. Starting from people serving these coffees, our baristas, we want to make sure they have a good wages, they have a good life balance. It's very hard to have a good life and work balance in a coffee, as you know.
Oh yeah.
And I've been doing it for too long, and I want to make sure that our team actually has as best balance as possible. They have a great resources and facilities to learn, to get inspired, to add. That's how they're going to add more value to the cup of coffee. Then going back to our roasters, of course, we want to make sure that these people are inspired. They actually love being a roasters. There's always something to look for, something to innovate. Different techniques have to get best out of the coffee as well from their angle. But, most importantly, that we can see that we're making a positive changes on the farms. And kind of when we look at it, end of the day, we are just communicators and messengers. We're not the ones that are making this change. Our customers are. And if we don't tell this to our customers, and if they don't understand, then we just live in our own bubble, in our own world that no one understands. And we need to sort of, number one, say that we're going to do these things and do them. And most importantly, communicate them so people get more and more educated. Hence why we've decided to make Marrickville. There's no kitchen, and that shop is, it has a smaller turnover than what we have in Canberra, and it's not as profitable, trust me.
But most of them aren't. Most cafes aren't.
But we're learning how to actually make it profitable. Without jeopardizing our integrity, without jeopardizing our value, but in the same time with enhancing our values even more, which I'm happy that you've sort of noticed that with what
for sure. For sure.
But I do believe that customers we don't know what we don't know, and same with the customers. Customers have not been exposed to this new coffee, so they don't know for better, and it's our job to show them, not to teach them. I don't like teaching anyone. I'm not a teacher. If I want to teach,
no one really wants to learn anyway.
Exactly,
they just want to drink their coffee.
we just want to give them this great coffee experience that they have not tasted before. And to be honest, like lately, what excites me more is when I have everyday customer to sort of say, I've never tasted coffee as good as this. It makes me more excited than getting feedback from one of the people that love in the industry, and they say, wow, this is really good coffee. So, thanks, mate. It's good. But penetrating that message to customer, it's so much more important.
I have to tell you an experience that I had when I went to Honor in Marrickville. I was there with Noah drinking a coffee and having some breakfast. And this woman walked past me and she said to me, oh my God, Lee, is that you? And I said, Vanessa? I used to make her coffee 10 years ago at a cafe that I worked at called Taste on Foveaux Street. And she said to me, I have to tell you the craziest thing. I was just sitting here thinking about you while I was drinking the coffee, and I bought an expensive cup of coffee, and you know me, I don't drink expensive coffee, but there's something about this place that just makes me want to try everything. And I bought some coffee that was a ridiculous price, and I was thinking about how it reminded me of you. And I just thought, wow, isn't that the circle of life in coffee just brought in such a beautiful moment?
Yeah. Wow.
For all the, I'll never forget that. And the synchronicity involved in that. She's a beauty therapist. She teaches beauty therapy at ACNT, and she used to buy her coffee off me every morning and saying, do you do some magic with the coffee? What's that? What do you do? How do you make it taste this way? But then fast forward 10 years, I'm sitting there having this incredible experience while I'm visiting Australia again, and a customer of mine comes up to me and tells me how magical her experience was and that it reminded her of me. That's just every fucking reason in the world why we do what we do, right?
It's very, very cool, yeah. I do remember when we opened Marrickville We had, I'm pretty sure we ended up on the news. I don't know in what channel. We've definitely ended up in newspaper with a lot of interesting comments.
Is that about the pricing?
Yeah,
$40 a cup or something?
I think $32. I don't know what they charged. And a lot of people are like, just like, wow, these people are, thieves, and it's ridiculous, and what are they doing?
Uh-huh.
And I was traveling as I always do, so, and I don't really like being active in social media that way anyway.
Uh-huh.
What was so interesting is because there were many, many comments on the Facebook from everyone, but then the farmers that we work with, we came to them and they started defending. No, I know Sasha. Been working with us for so many years. He helped us to build a childcare center, and he's done this for us, and he's done that. Of course, they deserve to pay, and the coffees he's charging, it's best of the best of the best coffee. It was Finca Debra, which is like incredible coffee. Very, very, of course, very expensive. And there's a reason why it's so expensive, and it's the reason that I support. And but it was nice to see the bit of the war, kind of in a interesting way, between end customers that don't really understand and the farmers that are kind of trying to,
validate.
Tell these people and validate, hey, this makes sense.
But doesn't that go to the heart of this issue that we have in branding with coffee? The fact that we have to convince customers that this is a product that changes in value based on people that live really far away from where you are, that have to change things that they're doing, and it costs money to change things that they're doing to bring you the quality of coffee that you actually want. And while 10 years ago it may have cost $3, they're actually getting paid less now than they were 10 years ago.
Exactly.
And the cost of production is much more expensive than it was back then. And by the way, the cafe has only been able to increase the cost of that cup of coffee by 20 to 50 cents a cup over 10 years if we're lucky.
Yeah. So there's definitely a bit of ignorance that we, as a cafe owners, we are afraid to actually increase the price to what it should be.
What do you think it should be?
Well, we are increasing the prices now, actually, as we're speaking, within the next 2 weeks. And for many factors, but one of the also factors like milk, price of the milk has increased in Australia.
Is it really?
And it should, because of the droughts. One of the farmers, because we work with Riverina Milk, we have very close relationship with them. And for example, one of the farmers, his cost of milk production, he's paying 500% more for the water now than what he got it. So he's got additional bill of $1 million a year just for the water.
That's insane, isn't it?
50% added cost for the feed for the cows, etc. So even though you're paying your milk for, like, if price jumps from $2.40 to $2.60 or $2.70, that's still not covering enough. So
no.
We're still playing that game, race to the bottom with everything, milk and the coffee. We're charging for coffee $4.50, but we're charging for bottle of water $4.
Right.
Doesn't make sense.
No.
Like, okay, you get some filtrations, plastic bottling on the line. It doesn't take a lot of money to produce a bottle of water. No. It's kind of a bit scary who's making that money and where is that money going to.
Corporatization.
And also it takes, to make $4.50 coffee. Oh my God, like we can talk for days and days and days.
Totally.
What's the journey to make that coffee taste the way it tastes? And and not many people are successful in that entire chain. Baristas are struggling, cafe owners are struggling, farmers are struggling for sure. I think roasters are doing pretty well, and maybe capitalizing a lot as well, because roasters have a freedom to put the packaging they wish to say it's specialty, but not really buy specialty. So I think there's just kind of more I think of it. It kind of makes me a little bit more worried, a bit more sick as well about the situation we are in at the moment, because it's not looking promising.
When I speak to green buyers out there, and a lot of conversations are had behind the scenes of this podcast, every week I'm trying to get a feel for, is it shifting? Are people getting more concerned? Are they getting more hopeful? Are they seeing any changes? The thing I'm hearing more and more green buyers say is it's making less and less sense to continue to coffee farm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but sorry, I forgot to answer your previous question. We can comment that as well. But in my opinion, we're charging now $4.50 for our small coffees, which is standard. So that's not your fancy raspberry candy or really expensive coffee. In my opinion, if you're charging $5 for a cup of coffee, we would make a big difference for everyone. And anything less before, if you're doing the right things and if you're supporting specialty coffee all the way from the soil to cup in a right way, that's where I believe it should be, no less than $5.
If people are happy to pay 50 cents extra for soy milk or $1 extra for soy milk, the part that I've been throwing around in my head for a little while now is, if they're happy to pay that much extra for soy milk, why aren't they happy to pay that extra for better quality coffee? Why do you think we can't get that across?
I think it's all in our heads, to be completely honest.
As owners, as custodians of the industry?
As the owners and as the leaders of this industry, because it's, I feel that future in industries, it's in our hands.
Yep.
And when I started working in a cafe, bottle of water costed $2. Now it's $4.
Right.
Coffee was $2.50 back then, or $3. Now it's maybe $3.50 in most of the shops. And we've decided to start making these changes. And maybe I might be out of the business in 5 years. Because I'm charging too much and people are going to be angry at us, or maybe not. But we feel like it's our responsibility to say these messages.
Is that a real concern?
It's a concern for, I think I'm one of the lucky people that not that I know coffee from farm to cup, but I'm involved in a coffee from the soil. Being a farmer, being a green bean buyer, having a project origin company, working on innovations with the coffee machines and the grinders, etc. Having a roasting company in the coffee shop. So we have understanding on all of the scales of the coffee chain, and we also have understanding what part of the chain is a weak link and what part of the chain is doing well. And it's a concern, because if we maintain the lower prices, our chain is going to break, for sure.
It's weak already.
It's already weak. It started already cracking on the farms. Cafe owners as well. Rents are getting expensive, wages are getting higher, which is great. That's what we want, for wages to be higher, because we want people to have a great lives being in a coffee, and we want barista role to be as underappreciated as it is by still many people, and undervalued and underpaid. But in order to do that, we need to move this to customers to actually support this industry, so we can have a lot healthier industry. Barista role is 2, 3, 4 years. These days, people don't work as a barista more than 3, 4 years.
Whereas when we were doing it, it was 10 years you could do it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's and it's hard. Hours are long. Wage is not very high.
Yep.
And maybe the systems and mechanics, it's way too repetitive. It's becoming very robotic. So there's many things that we need to invest in that field to give great appreciation to barista. And I'm not saying only at the wage, but so many other things needs to be done, so they actually want to work in a coffee shop 5, 6, 7 years, and they enjoy that work instead of being burnt. And that's the common word that we keep hearing. Oh, I'm burnt. I can't do this anymore. I love coffee, but I want to do something else.
Do you think it's that they're burnt, they're bored, they're feeling understimulated? What do you think the situation is?
I think that it's just feeling underappreciated. Like a lot of us, when we start in a coffee, we start as a baristas.
Yep.
And then, and it's probably like one of the maybe even lower paid jobs. If you're a green buyer, you'll get higher wage.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a roaster, you'll get a higher wage. If you're a trainer, you get a higher wage. If you're account manager for working for the company. So by many, not by us and by me, but by many, it's considered introductory role.
Right.
But then it shouldn't be, and it's not. Like we've been lucky in Marrickville, for example. Isaac has been with us for 8 years, and he's loving being barista. My very first employee, Angus Mackey, you probably know him.
Yeah.
He's been with me before even Honor started, like 14 years. And he's actually now in barista leader, and he's behind the machine and loving what he's doing. Because in the last few years, we have started changing the structure of what barista role is and what it should be. And there's, to me, that's I think if cafe owners have greater percentages and greater margins, and they're actually not just surviving, I'm sure they would love to look after the person that's making the cafe successful, and the first person next to them is their barista or their chef.
Yep.
But just because of the scenarios of how cafe shops are run these days, it's hard. It's survival, and it's a survival mode, I think, for the entire industry, that we sort of all need to wake up. And I believe that we started waking up ourselves. In a company, to sort of say, well, let's not follow what's been done because it doesn't work. Let's just do what we believe we should be doing to, at least make people happy within our establishments, and hopefully can serve as an example for other ones to sort of say, well, you know what, we can work like that. It can be better. And if we increase the price to $4.50, hopefully other people will do it as well. And then we're going to increase the price to $5. That's our goal. And hopefully other people will get there. Then suddenly everyone will kind of go, whew, we can breathe now.
Yeah.
I can afford to pay my rent. I can afford to do this. I can afford to send my barista once a year to the farm. That doesn't happen in industry as a standard. No. But they need to, because they need to know the product. So suddenly our industry can sort of start, with more revenues and with more value, with more equity inside, we can sort of start looking at a brighter future rather than just being in a survival mode.
Do you think that, are you confident that your customers will show up?
We'll see. I think in order to make these big moves and big changes, we need to build a trust, number one.
Yep.
We need to build a trust in the customers that they, like your friend from Sydney, they trust us when they come to Marrickville to sort of say, I'm okay to spend $10 for this cup of coffee. And so we need to build a trust first. And once we build a trust and they show the interest and passion and love for the craft of coffee, to sort of say, hey, I want to go that next step. It's my birthday. I really want to taste one of the best coffees I've tasted. And they can treat themselves. And I think once we build that trust, the way we communicate, it's really important. We will definitely be able to change it. Like I speak, at least for Canberra, it's a very, very small community. And in Canberra 6 or 7 years ago, there was no filter coffee, did not exist. And we've tried, and we used to put chocolate on cappuccinos. We didn't like it. We used to put serve coffees with vanilla syrup and caramel syrup and all that stuff. And we said, you know what, we actually don't believe that coffee is about, masking it with some artificial flavors.
Okay.
Let's stop that.
Okay.
And we did, but we've done it in a little bit aggressive way. We're too cool, we hipster baristas and all of that stuff. No, you don't know what the coffee is. No decaf for you. And we did not really get a good message from our customers. So, I want chocolate in my cappuccino. This barista is not giving to me, and like it was completely wrong approach by us.
Thank you for admitting that.
Oh, of course. And that's simply because we did not build a trust in the customers.
Yeah.
And we're telling them what to do. We're trying to teach them. So I think as in the industry, like when we goes, I teach my customers, I say, please don't teach anyone.
Listen to them instead.
Listen what they like and what they have to say, and then let's explore the coffees together.
Yeah.
And give them what they like. And this is where, I don't know if you watch much barista competitions, and you know, and I think the entire world knows that we're very passionate about competitions.
Yeah.
But maybe if you watched Matthew Lewin competing in Boston, and his first course was milk-based coffee, and he goes, you know what? I'm actually gonna give you what I've been asking my customers. What do you like? Let's start with this. What would you like? And he goes, majority of my customers want simple coffee that tastes like chocolate.
Yeah.
I'll give you that, but I'm going to give you best version of the milk coffee that tastes like chocolate. And when they taste that coffee, they goes, wow, it is the best version I've tasted. That's how we can build a trust.
Yep.
And then once we build a trust, then we can take them to this, $40
Panama, a cup. Yeah.
$40 coffee, something really special. And they will love to be part of that journey. But we don't want to start with that straight away.
I tell clients a lot, my consulting clients, your customer's journey through coffee has to be on their terms, not on your terms.
Yeah. So I do believe that, to kind of answer your question, that we have built a trust with our clients to be able to raise the price to $4.50 instead of $4, and to provide that with educated materials, and to actually with the materials to tell them this is why. And because we have that trust with them, I'm sure that majority of our customers are gonna say, yep, cool, fair enough. I know I'm supporting something good here.
And will you communicate the price hike and the intricacies behind why you're doing it, particularly with regards to the dairy farmers? Will you communicate that to your customers?
Absolutely. This is why I was talking to you earlier yesterday. I've recorded about 16, 17-minute video to our staff internally. So I can cover my part from the farm perspective. Why do we need to increase price? And but I was struggling sending it off to our team.
Why? Because of the technology. Yes.
Technology. So my 11-year-old boy has showed me how to send along files. So
that's wonderful. You got to get him involved from the early ages.
Yeah. Anyway, like what we're doing for all of our I think about 110 staff in the cafes, we're doing about 40-minute video. And that they all need to listen and see at their own time to understand, for them to really understand why, and then they will be bringing that message to our customers why we've done it in a very personal and curated way, and I'm sure that this time we're not gonna have as issues as we had 5 or 6 years ago when we said no more vanilla latte for you.
Well, part of the challenge as a business owner is to learn from our previous experiences in trying new things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the biggest lesson, and it's just best learning you can have, to learn from your own experiences. And I've made so many mistakes in my life.
Same. I say to people often, like, being a business owner is going to teach you everything you never wanted to know about yourself.
Yeah.
And if you can, if you have the stamina and the grit and determination to be able to go through that journey with open eyes, sometimes squinted eyes because it's too hard to see what's happening and look inside of yourself, do it anyway, even knowing that it's going to be difficult. It's the most rewarding journey that you'll ever have, and it will scare the shit out of you pretty much 95% of the time.
Absolutely. But what's cool is when you are scared, or when you're confused, when you fail, that's when you learn. That's where you start seeing things wider, deeper, better, and that's what you build yourself as a person, as a leader as well. So they're all positives at the end.
Did you know that the journey was going to be what it's become?
No way. No, not at
It
all. And
surprised you?
it surprised me, and I have no idea where it's gonna go, to be honest, as well. I just look back and I say, "Wow, have we done this? Is that what we came up with, or did we really take this far, or did we come this far as well?" I really appreciate, everything, but it's. I think I hope that maybe. I hope that also our team thinks the same, but I hope that we haven't changed, and the why for coffee has not changed. But that curiosity hasn't changed. That being playful with the coffee and being a kid in a lolly shop, that hasn't changed at all. But yeah, maybe results and sort of what we are doing, what's above the surface. Yeah, okay. Well, wow, that's new. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that you're gonna go to Sydney or Marrickville and serve this ridiculous 40, 50, 60 coffees on offer in one time. I could not only dream about it, or I did not even dream about it 5 years ago, right?
I bet frozen coffee came from a completely different direction than what you expected.
Yeah. So, but I think as long as we always true to our values, and we don't, we honest with our actions, yeah, we can go very far. And it's, I'm excited about the future, actually.
Your people impress the shit out of me. One person in particular, massive shout out to Hanny.
Hanny, yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know who I'm talking about, check out Barista Hanny on Instagram. I've spoken with Hanny a couple of times from kind of a mentor perspective. And
Nice.
The thing that blows me away is the way he talks about honor, and the way he talks about the way he approaches learning and growing and being cultivated by the place he's chosen to call home.
That's very nice to hear always.
Well, it's lovely to watch, because I hear so many complaints from baristas that when you do hear somebody talk with admiration and adoration and excitement and deliberate consideration about their career path moving forward, and you hear them deciding to show up and be really considered, like, I'm thinking about where I want to be in the next 10 years and the role that the company can play in that, and how I can show up for the company. That's really intelligent.
So cool. So cool. Thanks for that. I think it's it comes down from maybe definitely the personal values. It started off obviously being community driven, family person. Like, family for me is everything. Coffee for me is everything. Why don't we look after coffee like family, and people that work in the coffee? We always call it on a family, and it's not called, I said, for marketing purpose. It's actually what's in the air. It's what we breathe. It's what we see. It's what we live day by day. But I think it's being able to, I don't know, always lead as an example, and if we say that we're gonna do something, we actually do it. And if we say that we're here to, look after the farmers, and even though we may be not making that many profits in our shop for a certain number of months, and these people are partners in that shop, they know why we're doing it, and they know that we need to be better at our job and faster or quicker, so we can extend the profits, but not necessarily cut the corners with our values. I think a lot of people know why do they do coffee, and it's a way beyond coffee. It's way beyond delicious cup. So when things do get tough for us, we actually stick together more than when we win or when we celebrate. And to me, that's always and it probably comes from the sport. The sport is a 60-minute game, and you're not going to be winning entire time, and then of these 60 minutes, so you become a winner. There will be periods in that match that you're 5 goals down or 2 goals down and 3, but you need to fight in order to survive, and in order to maybe in that last minute score that winner, and then you have that moment.
Right.
And that's why we need the team that lives and breathes the same way and that thinks the same. And it's kind of how we choosing the leaders in a company, and how we choosing and the baristas. We choose people by values more than by a set of skills.
That really comes across. I have to tell you, it comes across when I'm in your cafes and when I speak to your employees. When I hear Hani talk to me about the way that he engages in choosing coffees for competition, when I hear him talk about the way that he wants to talk to customers about coffee and his conversations he has with Sam, the roaster, about all of that, the consideration that he as an employee has is something that he learnt from the people around him. I mean, he's a very smart human anyway, and he's got great values. But you can take a person that has those things and put them in a shit environment, and they're not going to thrive at all. But when you plug them into the right environment, everybody
blossoms.
Everybody blossoms, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely right. Like my dad sometimes would say, because my dad used to help and package coffee.
Mm-hmm. God bless him.
It's not up until and my mom as well. So they were amazing. My son sometimes would help them, but my dad would observe us when we compete or when we're in the mood and like what we do. And he always tells me, because Sash, I'm not surprised that all of you are like crazy and insane and you're just like obsessed. But like, how did you all come together? Like for, to have one individual to be, obsessed about what he does, but then you have another individual, another company, another place, another field, because like each one of you obsessed. Like that's something that I just cannot understand. Like you all the same.
Yeah, you are.
And I think it's cool. Like, I mean, we obviously sharing a lot of internal things from the online. I don't want this to become only by us and our conversation. There's people listening, but maybe to share a message to someone that's listening is the way we look at it. It's like a bus, and whatever company you're running, whether it's a small cafe or big cafe or industry, and there's a driver in a bus, and that driver of the bus is going somewhere, and he needs to clearly communicate to the people that are going in a bus, where is he going?
Mm.
Otherwise, if you don't communicate it properly, like people are going to be halfway through, hey, dude, stop, I need to get out. This is my stop. Which means maybe the driver has not selected the right team or communicated properly where the driver is going. But once you have your vision, your values, your communication, and you stick with it, there's integrity there, and you're going there, it's like a magnet. People that love that, they're part of it, they're going to jump in a bus, and they'll be part of the bus. And then, they might select the seat that they don't like. Someone starts as a barista seat, and he's loving it, he's enjoying it. Maybe he's getting comfortable in that seat now, and it's my job, not necessarily maybe my job, but maybe someone that's in charge of that section of these few seats, mm-hmm. to look at and say, what, Hani is really comfortable in this seat, and he's good. We're gonna make sure that Hani, before Hani leaves this seat, someone else can do a better job than Hani, and that's gonna be Hani's job to make sure that that's done the way it's done. But then we're going to be talking to Hani, curating him, looking after him, helping him to see what's inside of him, to see what's the suitable seat for him. Hani loves where he's going. He loves the destination. Maybe he's not comfortable with the seat. So let's help them to find the seat for them. And then on and on and on. So that's on our philosophy.
And for anyone who's listening, sorry to cut you off there, Sasha, but for anyone who's listening that contacts me or comments on any of our stuff and asks, how do you build a culture in a company, in a business, in a team, that's the perfect example of how you start to build a culture, is understanding what the philosophy is of how you want things to feel and flow is just so important. In Elixir and in Map It Forward, we use the idea of a ship. You know, for us, everyone's got a role on a ship. And if everyone that's doing their job on the ship isn't working in flow, well, then the ship's not going to go in any targeted direction. It's going to slow down, it's going to go left when it should be going right, and it's going to end up, there's going to be disease on it if the person's not cleaning it, and all of this kind of stuff. Understanding how to have a culture is like, these analogies are really wonderful for learning how you want to build leadership in a team and how you want to build culture and journeys and all that kind of stuff. It unites people.
Yep.
It's really important, no?
Yeah, it's very cool.
Tell me, when you approach, I want to talk a little bit more about the farms and that type of thing. Somebody once said to me that one of their uncles, so they themselves owned a coffee farm, and their coffee farm was doing specialty grade coffee, while their uncle's farm was doing commercial coffee. And right before we got on the podcast, he and these guys and I to talk, their uncle sent them a photo and said, this is what we've decided to do with the sea market. And it was a photo of him hacking down with a machete his trees. They've decided to cut them down. They're going to plant macadamia trees instead. What role does diversification play in the potential success of turning around the viability of a coffee farm, do you think?
Diversity of
crops.
Can you explain
Yes.
of the crops?
Yeah, so if I mean, in the perfect world, we would transition all coffee to being specialty grade so that we could find some sort of independence or pseudo independence from the sea market. We could have it so that people were relationship buying, but until we can get commercial farmers into that space, they're dependent on selling commercial grade coffee. So while they're stuck in that trap, is there a real reality, or is there a chance that diversification of crops, so that they're not just planting coffee, they're planting coffee and, let's say, avocados or macadamias or whatever it is that something that we should be trying to help them consider with regards to the viability of their farms?
So talking from personal experience, turning a commercial farm in Nicaragua into a specialty, we have not made many changes in the first year. We just kind of looked for the first harvest and we saw, okay, this is what it takes to become a commercial farmer. What we've seen in the first year is the way they were looking after the soil. To me, there was a big alarm, and biggest alarm is a lot of emphasis on fertilizers, and when we are emphasizing a lot on the fertilizers from year to year, soils are getting weaker and weaker and weaker. So we actually need even more fertilizers.
Yep.
Which kind of means that if we have some of the weather conditions like a lot of rain or a lot of sun or something else, like the farm and the trees most likely will not survive. So for me, it's a lot more than just planting different crops. But then we were also looking at the people that are working on a farm. And in majority of the farms still, even though we have some even specialty coffee farms, people that work on the farm, they're considered as a labor.
Okay.
And to me, that's the biggest issue. Looking at the philosophy in honor, like company is about the people and farm is about the people as well. But these people are considered as a labor. They the housing where they live, it's way below any acceptable standards.
Really?
Majority of the farms in Central America, again, not talking about Brazil. Brazil is beautiful, but majority of the farms in Central America, and I can talk particularly about in Nicaragua, in Dipilto, which is the biggest and most famous region in Nicaragua. You're going to have in a room 4x4, or actually 6x6, 30 people sleeping there on top of each other. No basics. The food they eat is completely, it doesn't have a right nutrients, right diet. So if you want to have a healthy trees and healthy farm, you need to have healthy people there, number one. And I'd be looking at these things and these changes. And that does not necessarily need to cost money to have a lot more money to have these people that live on the farm to provide them a better food. As you were saying, we can actually take part of the farm and say, this is going to be veggie garden for you. We're going to plant avocados, we're going to plant this, we're going to plant this food, we're going to bring some animals on the farm, because that's going to help it to have a healthier farm as well, because you want to have everything that actually...
The ecosystem.
It's ecosystem that's actually all internal. So we started doing these things, looking after the people, providing the better housing that they actually build themselves. They're very handy people. They actually know the farm better than each one of us. They've been living, indigenous people, from generation to generation to generation on the farm. We can ask them the questions, because they've been growing vegetables and everything without any fertilizers. We can go back in the past and learn from them.
Yeah.
And suddenly they feel more valued. They're part of this. They're not laborers anymore. They're actually part of building this community to be better. And we need to change that complete philosophy how we are farming. In the past, farmers have been, slaves, people that work on farms, and now they're laborers. But they need to be part of the society in order to be considered as a part of the society, and we can learn from them, as we have been learning in Nicaragua from them. That we learn the techniques how to do better composting. Now that we have animals in there and chickens and ducks, and we use their droppings for fertilizers, now we have this really cool system that they're happier, and that happiness and the food they produce and the food we making the composting and putting this on the plants, on the trees, to me we need to be doing these activities. Of course, following step is now they're motivated and there's a trust in them with us as well. Let's see how, and again, I can continue talking about the people and the other things we have done. Majority of them don't know how to read, how to write.
Are you teaching them?
It doesn't cost us much money to send a teacher there once a week, 2, 3, 4 hours, teach basics.
Yeah.
We probably not gonna. I'm 42 years old. I've been going to Spain or these countries for 7 years. I don't speak Spanish. My Spanish is terrible. I'm the old man. I'm probably not gonna learn Spanish ever in my life. And I gave up. I said, I'm just too dumb for this. It's not gonna happen.
Oh yeah, you've clearly shown us how dumb you are, Sasha.
But what I'm trying to say is we're probably not gonna make a big impact for someone that's 40, 45 years old, and now we're gonna teach them how to write.
Right.
But we'll definitely make an impact for next generations. And now and send the managers to go to school, get them to teach about agriculture, get them to learn about cupping, learn about roasting, get these people involved more. Majority of the farmers, they don't know how good their coffee is. They don't.
Can I just say something there?
Yes.
In the sense that you may not teach a 45-year-old man how to read, but what you are doing, it sounds like, is giving him his dignity back.
Exactly. Make them feel valued.
Which is so fucking important.
Yeah, absolutely. People always talk to me, Sash, how did you improve that coffee, or what did you do with the process for that, a largo coffee? Back then it was 78 points, now it's 87. Tell me your recipe of carbonic maceration. I said, well, what you see, the carbonic maceration, it's stuff only that's about the surface. It's about people, it's about soil, it's about making a healthy community, respect for everyone.
Dignity.
Dignity. They used to eat away from, like in the forest, they were afraid to eat with the managers. Now they all have lunch together, we celebrate their birthdays, we give them the cake for their birthday. And when we build that trust, now they actually start having suggestions to sort of say, hey, maybe we should do less fertilizers, or maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. We don't need to, tell them you pick the yellow cherries, because they don't. They pick red, because if they know when they pick red, it's good for them. They're gonna have better food. They're gonna be valued more, and they're contributing for something greater. Coffee is always about people, and I always say that. And we should, if we want to improve something, make a change, it starts with people, and then everything else comes secondary. And that's the first step I would recommend anyone. If you're looking to go from commodity to specialty, look after the people, and because they're the ones that will be picking the coffees for you. Secondly, of course, is the soil, and then when we have that really healthy ecosystem, then regardless of the varietals you have and altitude you have, coffees will taste, with a lot of hard work, of course, and the teamwork. It's possible to turn commodity farm into a specialty farm.
I want to talk to you a second about the soil. I'm looking into a lot at the moment into the microbiome makeup in soil.
Yeah.
Are you guys focusing on that? Is that how you're looking at approaching improving the quality of the soil, or are you looking at it in chemical ways? Are you looking at it in a combined approach? How does that work for you guys?
It's a big learning for us as well. We definitely are looking to move away from fertilizers that are damaging the soil as a step one, and then focusing on organic fertilizers that we still buy, but in the same time we're making our own composting.
Yep.
By using the food scraps from the farm that we have, and cascara, and adding a lime, and etc., and Californian worms, which are really good, to break down the compost, so we can use the liquid out of that to spray on the leaves, and we can also use the compost for the trees to plant a better future.
So the liquid from the compost, is that acting as helping it a resistance to roya and things like that? Is that what's going on there?
No, it's helping to. It's partially helping for roya, but we still need to use fertilizers for roya. That we buy, but it's helping to keep a tree, give us more nitrogen, a lot of different minerals, so the tree is healthier and as healthy as possible. Because we've seen in the past, when tree gets attacked with the roya, the healthier trees survive, but unhealthier trees, they're just gone.
Yeah. So the immune system of the tree really plays a major role in its resistance, or its ability to deal with being attacked by this fungus.
Yeah, exactly. Because when we got hit by a fungus in the first year, we lost 40% of the trees.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
And the immune system was not strong enough. And in the same way, in our farm in Honduras, which is a really high altitude farm, and when we reached very low temperatures, 2, 3, 4 degrees, we lost 50% of the trees.
Wow.
Which is kind of okay, wow, but then we think, okay, why did we lose only 50 and the other 50 survived?
Right.
And then we start, because it's our research and development. So we're using every loss to understand, coffee a little bit more. And we sort of learned that the trees that we were not, heavily feeding with the fertilizers, and we didn't have such a big yield, which that's where a lot of producers would go, as many fertilizers as possible we feed, we'll have a higher yield. that's why Brazil has, such a high yield, because they're heavily relying on the fertilizers. But on our farm, people can't afford that. So we've done a bit of a test. Half of the farm we've gone, more fertilizers. Other part of the farm we've done less fertilizers. Where we're getting more fertilizers. Yeah, yield was greater, but where we had less fertilizers, coffee quality was tasting slightly bit nicer. And the longer term, obviously, tree and the soil seem to be healthier in that way. So we've sort of learned that we need to use fertilizers in moderation. And ideally, I would prefer us, as we're going in the future, to have everything that we're putting in the soil, it's something that's from our local environment, rather than buying a commercial
introducing something different.
And even though they are organic, and then relying on a lot of shade, we planted some of the trees. Again, I'm really bad with the names, so I'm probably not going to be able to tell you what the trees are, but I can send you a link afterwards. Some of the trees that have a lot of good nitrogen fixes, so they actually would improve the soil and improve the nitrogen in the soil just by having these shade trees. And we have some other trees that when leaves fall down, they have a lot of phosphorus inside. So we're using these leaves to help us to increase phosphorus in the soil. And to me, what's exciting is I can possibly see the future that not only we should be feeding the soil to be healthy and the coffee trees to be healthy, but we should also be looking in the future how we can feed the soil to get a better flavor of the coffee.
How exciting!
And we've seen it with the fine dining restaurants that Blue Hill. I love what they do in New York, and they're feeding the animals with the diet that and the chicken with some chilies and etc. I don't know how much is that harming a chicken. So
I know, right? I'm like, is the chicken happy?
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether it's chili or paprika, but anyway, you sort of see this egg yolk and it's red. So wow.
Yeah, wow.
And we've also had some degustation of the vegetables that have with different nutritions for these vegetables, and you can clearly taste the difference in these vegetables.
Do you know much about hunting?
Hunting?
Yeah, hunting animals.
No.
I listen to a podcast. I listen to the Joe Rogan podcast a lot, and he's a very enthusiastic hunter. And they talk about when they shoot bears. And what they've realized is that if you find a bear whose diet has been blueberries, their meat is a tinge of blue and it tastes like blueberries. He says it's the most delicious hunting meat you'll get is a grizzly bear that survived on blueberries. Wow,
there we go.
Right? It's really interesting. So maybe a brown bear rather than a grizzly bear, but it's one of the two. It's this idea that going off the natural diet of an animal in the wild will determine how great it is as eating.
That's very cool.
Fascinating, right? Fascinating. Yeah. But with regards to the soil, I was wondering, do you guys work with any scientists to culture the different bacteria that are present in the culture and in the soil, and seeing what's advantageous to the immune system of the plants versus what's potentially harming them? I wonder if we're even there yet with being able to understand that.
Good question. At the moment, what we do, we have obviously a scientist. They come to our farm and they inspect soil to see the composition of minerals and what we have and what's missing and what we need to do to improve. Not necessarily we have a scientist now to sort of breed the certain culture that's in there. We are looking at biodynamic. I'm going to Peru in about 4 days, actually, and talking to quite a few farmers there that do biodynamic farming, and hopefully they can come to us to see us in Nicaragua and work with us and help us to understand a little bit more about biodynamics, so we can see how we can use that on the farm. When it comes to scientists and the culture, we have been doing a lot of that, but in fermentation stage of the coffee.
Right.
So we actually have a scientist. I'm heading to Ecuador, Colombia, and Peru next week. After the other, but in Colombia we're gonna be meeting scientists from Colombia. We're also gonna be taking one of our scientists that we're collaborating in Japan, because they do a lot of food fermentation, as we all know. They are unbelievable.
So amazing.
So we're doing collaboration with them to understand fermentation at more, and the cultures, the yeast, enzymes, etc. in a lot more depth. We have been understanding it to a certain degree, but it's a great opportunity to do more of that now. And also we've been collaborating with some of the wine industry, the scientists that are making the cultures for wine. And there's some really, really exciting projects coming up that I'm looking forward to sharing with everyone next year.
I can't wait. Tell me, does the water that you use in processing and in fermentation, do you consider how you recycle that back into the ecosystem of the farm as a part of improving the taste and quality of the coffee?
Well, number one, water is playing a big factor when we are fermenting coffee. What sort of quality water we would like to use when we ferment. And I've also written a big chapter in my book, The Coffee Man in El Salvador, about my failed experiments.
Okay.
about the water. So it's interesting read. If someone has the book, feel free to have a read. But of course, water needs to be clean, needs to be free of odors and smells and all of that. But even when we look at going deeper, when we ferment coffee, we should understand what sort of water we're using for fermentation. If we are using a water, for example, that's very aggressive, that has a very low pH and low mineral contact of certain minerals, we can actually take out a lot of lipids and proteins and a lot of the goodness out of the coffee
during fermentation.
During the fermentation. So we've done quite a few experiments when we are fermenting the coffee in the water, which is normally the case in East African countries, right? So we put the cherries or pulped coffees, and we let a coffee sit in the water. But we made like 2, 3, 4 different types of water. Okay. One is to mimic more of the rainwater, like a bit aggressive, lower pH, and depending of where it's raining, of course. And the other one was a bit more like really hard water, maybe 200 ppm. We found the tendencies that we believe that using the rainwater, due to inconsistencies and what we measured at very low pH, it's actually stripping away quite a few nice tasting notes in the coffee that we normally have, and we don't have when we ferment in that type of water.
Is that because it's killing some of the strains that you're using in the fermentation product, whether they be yeast or bacteria?
I don't really understand yet, but it's a work for us to do as well. When our scientists come over. My theory, like my coffee brain, the way it thinks is, when we fermented these coffees, the fermentation of the rainwater, the color of that water was a lot darker, a lot deeper than what it was when we were fermenting the coffee in the spring water, which was a lot softer. So spring water was kind of almost cleaner, comparing with the other one. So we've obviously have taken a lot of nutrients or whatever we've taken out of the coffee, and made more? The coffee taste, or maybe added more.
So calcium and things like that through that.
But coffee tasted a lot more flatter, a lot more sort of two-dimensional, as opposed to when we tasted a coffee when we were fermenting in the spring water. So there's a lot to do there. There's a lot of unknowns as well, which is exciting. But water would play a pretty big impact on the quality of the water with like how we're fermenting. So, and it's another rabbit hole, right?
Well, I'm just sitting here thinking as you're talking about it, how does anyone find coffee one-dimensional? It's so fucking fascinating.
Yeah, so there's just not enough time to do
There's
all of
really
it, right?
not.
But there will be. It's something that we definitely want to look at. But to also answer your question, like what happens with that water after
Yep.
fermentation? Like it's still, in my opinion, a problem because a lot of farmers and a lot of unestablished farmers, that water would go to the waste.
Right.
And that's not what we want, because that water is it's toxic after being fermented, because coffee is at that stage very acidic.
Okay.
So water becomes acidic, and it can contaminate land as well. So majority of the people do not treat the water properly. What really needs to happen is they need to make a big pools. Water needs to go in these pools, and that water needs to be treated. And
to
things need to be balanced.
neutralize it,
Yeah.
and then
to neutralize
right.
it before it goes out, right?
Once you've neutralized it, could you not add it to a part of your fertilization
Absolutely.
strategy?
Absolutely. Yeah, part of fertilization strategy. Some people would use this water as to kind of wash coffees that are not necessarily high quality coffees, because it does the job, and then keep recycling that throughout the filters, etc. So there's a way to keep using it. We have been very conscious about the water. So when we are looking at doing experiments and fermentations, we are looking at the ways to make coffee delicious with using as least as possible amount of water. And we've kind of managed to make very, very, very delicious coffees. And not really rely on the water. Like in Kenya, it's very popular to do fermentation using a lot of water, and we've got quite opposite. We actually don't use any water, and we improve the coffee by 2, 3, 4 points, comparing with what they keep doing. Of course, it requires more technology and more resources and more money to set up the system. But long term, we're using like 50 times less water than what they're using now.
That's amazing.
So there's a ways, and I mean, in my opinion, we should be doing as much as we can to use no water or as little water as possible. I don't think it's kind of needed that we have to use water to the amounts that we're using these days.
That I feel like that applies both in the cafe as well as on the farms.
Yes, yes, for sure it does. Yeah.
Talk to me about where you sit with regards to your concerns about the current situation with climate shifting and coffee farming.
Climate shifting focused only on coffee farming, or climate shifting focused on the entire industry?
Well, let's start with coffee farming, because I think that the industry seems to think on, and I'm talking very generally, I feel that there's three different kinds of people when it comes to understanding the coffee value chain. There's the people who are very interested in all the intricacies and understanding it for what it really is. Then there are people that just like to virtue signal and pretend like they give any fucks about it. And then there's the people who don't think it exists at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to stimulate more intelligent conversation around the actuality of how people who are actually in coffee farming are experiencing climate shifting, so that we can understand the very real effects of what this means. The role of water conservation, the role of understanding the role that bacteria play and yeast play in the very important production of coffee. And the role that once the climate shifts, these microclimates that are creating these amazing coffees, how is that actually going to affect the longevity of a coffee farm?
Yeah. I love to talk about experiences rather than say the world what they need to think and what they should. I don't think. So I'll share a couple of experiences.
Sure.
So we mentioned a farm in in Honduras earlier. So we've seen tremendous changes there in the last 5 years. Huge, unbelievable. From a climate changes, and that farm is 1,650 meters. It's in Santa Barbara region in El Chelito Mountain, one of the most famous mountains in Honduras. Maybe in last 15 years, 13 Cup of Excellence winners are from there. I fell in love with the region, with the country, and kind of the idea was to buy my very first farm there. Fell in love with Honduras people, so I've been there for 5 years, and what we found last year, for example, we've never had 2-3 degrees cold days, so which is kind of opposite climate change, global warming, right? So that's what I experienced there. So a lot of farmers, including ourselves, have lost 50, 60, 70% crops because of this cold, really, really cold conditions, this extreme elevation. And normally the harvest there was December, January, February, March, because it's really, really cool. Temperatures are very cool. There's a lot of clouds in there, so cherries are ripening very, very, very slow. And in the last 3 or 4 years, we've noticed it goes to April, even May. So that's what's changed, and we believe it's due to the temperatures and conditions and climate changes. But this year we've seen a big phenomenon, and we don't know why. Looks like we're gonna have a harvest all year round.
You're not the first to tell me that. There are people in Brazil who are saying the same thing.
Yeah. So why is that happening? It's more to do with the climate changes than anything else. So we're going to be seeing coffee day in July, in August, and in September as well. And then, so that in Honduras has not ever happened before.
Wow.
On the other hand, when we go to our low, really, really low altitude farms, 800, 900, 700 meters, temperatures are extremely hot.
Yep.
And trees need a lot more fertilizers to survive. Trees like Bourbon or Typica, they almost don't exist in Honduras anymore because they're just not strong enough to survive these conditions. So that's why we have mix of these Catimos and the varietals that are Parainemas or Cafe Noventas that are very leaf rust resistant, and they're very robust, that have been developed, in institutions, so they can survive these climate changes. Many farmers don't really want to grow Typicas anymore. It's
too hard.
All of the coffees. Yeah, it's too hard. All of the coffees that we are drinking today are, coming from Typica, and farmers don't want to look at it anymore. Like we had a Bourbon on our farm in Honduras, and again, for us, interest is not to have a farm to make money; it's to research and development. So we kept that Bourbon. We kept giving it anything we possibly could and think of to make it healthy. Simply does not want to survive in that terroir, but it did survive 10, 15, 20 years ago without any problems.
This is evolution happening in front of our eyes, isn't it?
So it's definitely evolution happening, and it's affecting that. Before you could just grow the coffee and pick the coffee with very little human intervention, but now you really need to be hands-on and doing as much as you possibly can to not to give it a damage. And even in Ethiopia, like we were in Ethiopian forest last year, and people in there, they don't actually do anything to coffee apart from picking and chopping the trees. It's so easy. Yep. Even there, you can see that these trees are not as healthy as they were 5-10 years ago, and they're getting smaller yields. So they might need to start also doing some more work with their trees and with the varietals they're planting as well, as they have been, because in our Jima Research Center where they've been sort of coming up with all of these new varietals. They tend to produce healthier coffees and healthier trees and healthier cherries.
Wow.
So
What's the economic impact on a farm when they go from having a harvest season of about 4 or 5 months of the year to having to have it all year round?
we're gonna find out. As I said, it's gonna be our very first harvest there now, but like thinking, it's really hard. It's really hard to be able to sell your coffee. Number one,
Why?
like if you have a 2 or 3 month harvest, and if you're in Central America, buyers normally would come to Central America in February, in March latest, to buy all the coffees they need to buy from Central America, and they don't come back there again.
Right.
But then for some of the farms, they have a harvest in June, July, August, September. These coffees, by the time these buyers come next year, they're going to be past crop.
Yeah, wow.
And not many buyers will be coming to these countries to buy 10, 15, 20 bags of coffee from this particular producer, because they have this super late harvest. For me, personally, taste-wise, I'm looking at it as a positive. The reason why I'm looking at it as a positive is there's a less stress on the trees at one given time. And instead of having, maybe 5 kilo, let's say 1 kilogram of cherry on the tree at the same time, you're having that 1 kilogram during the 12 months.
Yeah, wow.
Or 10 months. So all of the nutrients that you're getting, you have a less concentrations of the cherries, and all of the nutrients that are coming from the soil, they're coming to these few cherries, as opposed to too many cherries. Possibly for the tree, maybe, I don't know, this is just guessing. Possibly for the trees, it can mean that trees will not be under so much stress after the harvest as well. So because you're gradually picking. But I guess we'll wait and see. I think the biggest concern is how they're going to be selling the coffee. And to me, that was one of my concerns when I go to Honduras and when I visit my farm in April or May. A lot of, and as I said, in that region, coffee is grown there still. A lot of farmers had no customers to buy the coffees from this sort of late harvest. And I'm sure you haven't or you have heard, but we have been organizing the auction that we call it late harvest by Project Origin. And that's the main reason why we wanted to do it, so we can give the value to the farmers when they're picking the coffees from April, May, and June. They can actually sell these coffees, and we can sort of show the world that, some of the best coffees in Honduras are actually from late harvest picking, because they have a lot more maturation time, etc. And there's only a few cherries on the tree that they pick from there, so they do taste exceptional.
I want you to teach me something, if you don't mind. When we talk, I'm trying to get an understanding in my mind of what it means to have a harvest the whole year round. So is it that and forgive my ignorance, please, like I'm prefacing all of this with, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, so I'm trying to learn. So is it that the coffee trees have their blossoms at one time, then they turn into cherries slowly? Or is it that it blossoms, the blossoms turn into cherries, and then it blossoms again, and then they turn into cherries, or it blossoms again, and then it turns into cherries?
Okay. So normally when we have a blossom, when we have these first spring rains, then depending on the microclimate or the terroir and varietal as well, it takes between 5, 6, 7, 8 to 9 months approximately to have your red cherry to be ready to be picked.
From the time of blossoming?
From the time of blossoming.
Okay.
In my opinion, the longer the wait, better it is.
Okay.
Hence why we prefer to go denser shade. I love clouds. When I see clouds,
you're happy.
So you kind of want to be on the edge when it's cold enough for the coffees to slowly ripen, because with a lot of sun, a lot of exposure, it's going to ripen faster. More shade
takes its time.
More cool conditions. Changes between day and night. It's warm during the day, it's cool during the night. All that additional stress helps us to have more delicious coffees.
What does that smell like, by the way, when the trees blossom?
Oh, it's jasmine flower.
Does it smell
So
phenomenal?
it smells phenomenal.
I can only. I've seen photos. It looks like a forest of trees covered with snow. It's just stunning. I can't imagine what that smells like.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's really, really cool. It's very exciting time of the year to go to the farms. It's happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and also in the same time, maybe let's say in 2 or 3 months, in one of the following like axles, you can also have blossoming, flowering, and then blossoming, and then maturation. So the idea is when you have a look at a tree, and if you see on the tree flowering, and then you see green cherries, and you see red cherries, and you see little like nods that flowering might happen in 2 months. That sort of, we can usually see that phenomena in Colombia most of the time. In Indonesia, we have 2 harvests per year. In Bolivia, with the extreme high elevations, but we don't normally see that in Central America, for example. And that's what we've been seeing in Honduras. That you just look at a tree and you can pick. It's kind of ending part of the maturation, picking. And then you look at some cherries. I'm going to pick this in a month and a half, and then you can see some flowering, or that's sort of you're going to have cherries in 9 months again, and on and on.
Wow.
So it's very exciting. It's exciting for flavor for me. It's a hard work to sort of bring that flavor to life consistently.
Does that, in turn, from an economic perspective, mean that you have to have pickers available all year round?
Of course. So it means even more money.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I was kind of trying to get at.
It means a lot more money, a lot higher cost.
Yep.
If coffee tastes better, we should pay for that cost.
Yep.
And we should go to these cafes and charge for these coffees $5, $6, $7, $8. And we should have enough budget that coffee buyers can go to these countries end of the year again to select the lots and buy the lots. Because people go once a year to maybe Honduras because of the financial issues as well. We can't afford to fly there as often. But if, for me, I love going to Honduras in June, July, and tasting unbelievable coffees, because we know that late harvest coffees are amazing coffees, but only maybe very few people in the world know about it.
Well, I hope more people know about it now that we're talking about it on the podcast.
Which is
that's the point of having these conversations. It's like new ideas getting injected into the community of things that they can consider, hearing it from, to use the phrase, hearing it from a horse's mouth. Like no one's going to believe this just if the internet starts talking about it. They have to hear it from you. Do you know Merling Presa?
No.
Okay, I have to connect the two of you.
Okay.
Merling is the vice president of CLAC. Do you know CLAC?
Yes, I do. Yep.
She's the vice president. She came on the podcast and we had a conversation about. She specifically wanted to talk about the challenges that smallholder producers are having in Nicaragua.
Yeah.
Across all of Latin America, but in particular Nicaragua, which is where she lives. And I really think that you guys could have some fantastic conversations about what's going on, because she's at the point where she's seeing no hope. She wants to, she's working very hard to try and find some solutions. She is representing 3,200 farms, but she's very frustrated at what she believes could be some very simple solutions. And she said to me, look, Lee, if we could get, mind you, she said this in Spanish through an interpreter, so I'm obviously paraphrasing, but she said if we could get 1 cent per cup of coffee to travel its way back down to the farmer, we would fix the problem with the coffee price crisis. And of course, as I was explaining it to her, it's a lot more complex than that, because we can't just simply charge an extra 1 cent per cup and that ends up at the coffee farmer. If we want the coffee farmer to get an extra 1 cent per cup, it means we have to charge somewhere in the order of about 50 cents extra per cup. And that's being conservative, for it to trickle down. there's a lot of disconnects. She's a really smart woman and she works very hard, but I think that she could probably get a lot out of having some conversations with you, especially as she's so connected in with a lot of the coffee farmers, being their vice president for their association.
And yeah, it would be awesome to have her to come to our farm, be our guest.
Yep.
Claudia is our partner and manager on the farm, very, very conscious about people and sustainability. She's Nicaraguan, so obviously very, very passionate about the country. And at least she can see what we've been doing and what we've done in 4 years. So, and hopefully, because the reason we've done it is not to keep it for ourselves. We've done it to actually show people that it can be done, and this is how we've done it, and help to inspire people so they can sort of see there's a hope, right?
Yep.
And people don't lose the hope, and hopefully they can get motivated with the work that we do over there. So yeah, it would be amazing.
Yeah, no, I'm going to make sure that I make that connection this evening. Do you see that will there be a book, a documentary, workshops? Will there be a way that a transference of information happens between these, I guess they're education experiments? These farms are education experiments, right?
It looks like we've staged the question, because we've already done a workshop on this, which I've recorded.
Great.
So people can look it up on a YouTube Project Origin channel, and it's called Behind Closed Doors. So it's about 50-minute talk, and I explain a lot about what we've done there. But in the same time, if people want to get a little bit more involved, or in a more personal way, we organize these late harvest auctions every year. It's in June or July, so that anyone can apply and come and be part of it, participate. We do on our farm in Nicaragua 7-day workshops. So for anyone that wants to learn about what it takes to be a farmer, people will actually live life of the farmer for 7 days. And
that's
then
awesome.
Which is pretty cool. They stay on our farm as well, and then they can actually have that full experience of understanding the farm. So we have a team of people that understand the soil and everything. So there's lessons in the afternoon what works and the science behind it. We're doing the first one, I think November or December, but throughout the Project Origin website you can inquire. And I know that in end of November we're organizing a trip to Ethiopia for people to sort of understand what's happening on our farms a little bit more. So there's a lot of activities that we do to sort of really help to connect people and the roasters and coffee fans and lovers with the farm.
Well, sir, just before we wrap up, I just want to say you inspire the shit out of me. And the things that you're doing as a team, and you personally as a leader with inspiring your team, is very inspiring to observe, and it's great. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing, because it's awesome.
Thanks, Lee. But yeah, I guess we just do what we love doing, and we love every moment of it. So that's all it is. Like,
ladies and gentlemen, a true humble leader.
and it is, because some people think, oh, you guys are doing this, and we just look at it. We just love what we do, and I'm lucky enough that I actually found this job that I love and appreciate so much.
Yeah.
So,
well, I want you to know it comes across as so authentic, and it's so rare to find people that you can see that integrity just shine through with no problem. So thanks for what you're doing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me as well. Yeah, it's a pleasure, actually. It was a very nice chat. I like this.
I'm glad you liked it. I had a great time.
Very cool, yeah.
Thank you, mate. And I hope that we can have another conversation after the late harvest auctions happen, so that we can maybe talk about the success of what effect that had on the community and things like that. But let's talk again in the future. I think people would really enjoy it. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thanks for your time, mate. Take care.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure.
Bye.